Hey, dude, it's good to see you.
Thanks, buddy. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Last time we spoke was just on the EL telephone. Um, and now look out,
The joys of digital, the digital innovation that we've had,
dude, in 2 years. What's going on? It's crazy. I can see you and stuff. But it's good to talk to you, man. Especially with this
Thank you.
new album. Holy
Thank you,
shit. It's incredible.
man. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really like because Cannibal was my favorite album 2020. I think it was
Thank you.
a lot of people's album 2020, but this one it's like everything is ramped up. Like, there's more layers, there's more heavy riffage. It's just ridiculously good. But it seems like you guys took everything you learnt from Cannibal and tripled your efforts. It's nuts. Is that is
Thank
that the thought going into it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a lot of change and everyone went through a lot of change over the last kind of 2, 3 years, didn't they? And so, our band was not unscathed by that and obviously had, a lineup change and stuff. So
Yes.
but I think just going into the record, there was just rejuvenation of like enjoying ourselves and enjoying being in a band and writing and just really pushing forward that kind of positive mindset, and like usually we would kind of go into a record and be like, oh, we're gonna write a metalcore album and it's gonna be Buried Tomorrow metalcore album. And like this record, we kind of didn't do that. We were just like, we just want to write the best album. We knew it was going to be heavy, but we were like, we just want to be the best we can be. And I know that sounds really simple and something that we probably could have done a long time ago, but like it was a perfect opportunity to kind of like think about it like that, which is like what's right for the record, like what's right for the song, like, and just let it kind of just enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. And that's kind of how this record was kind of born. So there was definitely a lot less restrictions, I suppose, put on us.
But going into the Seventh Son, did you feel a lot more pressure knowing that Cannibal was just massive? Was that something you guys were intimidated by?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always have a little bit of pressure about like being bigger and better in the band. I think, but I think obviously with the caveat of change and the caveat of it being different, the pressure's kind of off. Like in that, we released Death and Life, which was a really good kind of opener to what the new era of Buried Tomorrow was, and obviously like Death is one of our biggest songs now, and so we already knew we
Yeah.
were on a winning formula, and so kind of took out off that pressure. And I would argue that we might, I'd be up for doing that again and kind of releasing some of new things for people to listen to prior to an album because it gives you a really good kind of litmus test of what they might like or what they might want differently from your band. And so kind of we head into it and I know this is the best Bury Tomorrow people could ever get. And so, and obviously the next album, I'm sure I'll say the same thing in a different light. But like, for this one, we were like, I know it's the best Bury Tomorrow version that they've had. And so I'm quite confident in the fact that, I'm super proud of this album. And usually when you get to this point after having it for about a year, which we have,
Yeah.
um, you're like, I'd change that or I'd edit that or I'd do this differently. And that's always the crap bit about being in a band is that you're like, oh man, like I would change that by the time it comes out, but like I wouldn't change a thing. Like genuinely, it
Yeah.
is what it is, and yeah, I'm just super proud of it. Super proud. I can't wait for people to like hear it.
I feel lucky I've heard it. So
You
yeah,
are one of the lucky ones.
I am. I am. I was at work the other day, and just had it cranking in the headphones, man, and I just let it just take me away. And it was just
Thank you.
incredible. It
Yeah,
was so
that's why we wrote it.
nice.
Exactly that reason.
Just for me.
Just for
Yeah,
you.
just
Yeah.
for me. Like, there's a guy in Australia who's top loot.
Who wants to
Just
listen to this at work? Yeah, that's exactly why we wrote it.
but man, how was it going into working this working this? I told you it's very early in the morning. Let me back that up. That's a okay. So how was it going in with the process working with Ed and Tom? Obviously the new members and how was their contributions?
Yeah, I mean, again, like strangely easy, and I think we kind of it was a baptism of fire. I think them coming into the band, like their first two shows were 15,000 capacity venues, like headlining a stage, like it at a festival, like playing songs that we'd never played live before with production we'd never brought before, and
Mm.
in a brand new lineup. So they hit the ground running, and then obviously we did some kind of belated album release shows, but then we were straight in the studio recording Life and Death, and they were massive songwriters as part of that. And so, there was no moment of being like, oh, they're session musicians, but they need to adopt the Bury Tomorrow way. Like, it was immediately that this is the Bury Tomorrow way, and they are strong songwriters in their own right. And so, Tom is an outrageously talented human being. Like, he's a songwriter, a producer. He can play every instrument in our band, like including screaming as well. And so he just adds this like different level of dynamic where it comes to like he's a lyricist, an incredible lyricist. He, as I said, he writes songs for other people. And so to have that in the band immediately was just another planet. It was like we were working with some like top flight producer, but he's in our band. And then Ed like is an incredible guitarist, like could be a lead guitarist in his own right, and has obviously toured and been in the band Heart in Hand prior, and like we knew Ed. And so the whole process, because we had kind of had this knowledge and we knew these people, like it just meant that it was immediately great. And and the way the band was before, the kind of feeling in the camp before, like we've seen this marked increase in positivity and this marked increase in like just enjoying ourselves and just enjoying being in a band. And that matters probably more so than even the former stuff that I mentioned, which is about their talent, is just the vibes are so good in this band that it's just conducive of creativity, and enjoying what we do.
Another thing is you guys have a very distinct sound, especially the guitars, like the riffage. Like I know it's Bury Tomorrow just by hearing those guitar riffs and your vocals. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when you get other people coming into the camp, obviously they're bringing their own influences, their own, musical background. But how difficult is it to sort of keep that original sound and or incorporate those new elements? Because obviously there's those things you don't really want to have to change.
Yeah, I don't think you think about it as much, to be honest. Like, Dorse, Chris, our guitarist, he's still the major songwriter in this band. He still is the person that starts the process. And obviously I'm the vocalist of the band. And so
Yeah.
you've always kind of got that constant. Like if you really if we went and overanalyzed the music and what we've changed on this record to what we had in Cannibal, like they are marked difference. But I think the blessing with kind of, I suppose, metalcore music or melodic deathcore or whatever people want to call it, like, is that the spectrum is so large of
Yeah.
where you can go because we have melody and because we have overtly heavy bits. We've kind of got heavier and heavier throughout our career, but actually adding more and more melody in, like almost under the radar, kind of being like, hey, like, we are still very melodic and there's a lot of melodic moments on this new record, but
Yeah.
in general, most people with first reaction would be like, oh, it's viscerally heavy. It's a brutal album. But actually, when you get down to it, it's no more heavy or no less melodic than what our other stuff was. I think it's just a very, very different sounding record where those things are melded more closely rather than it feeling like verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. It's like this is an experience that people go on. And so, yeah, you less think about it. And like, as long as it's got that vibe, as long as it's got Dorse's riffs in, like as long as it's got my vocals over the top, like, but even then, like my vocals sound very different whilst they're still my tone. It's still what people recognize as me.
Yeah.
Very different to what they were on Cannibal, and every album, if you go back past our back catalog 7 albums deep, like I don't sound like the same vocalist from Portraits to what I do now, or Union of Crowns to what I do now, or Black Flame even to what we are now. Like, and so yeah, it's interesting. I think people will always be like, "Oh, it sounds like Bury Tomorrow," and it's like, yeah, but that's because we have been doing this for a long time, so and people are used to that, and they're used to how we sound, and obviously, we just try to push ourselves a little bit more on this record.
There are things you were doing vocally on this one that is so fucking cool, man. Like you just little bits and things. The
I
way
bet I know the bit that's in your mind when you say that. Is it in
really,
Banderas?
yeah,
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I think that's also a nod to kind of what's coming. I think, you've got to keep up, and the vocalists for a long, long time screaming. Bearing in mind, I've done this since I was 16 years old. I joined this band in 2006. Like, I've been doing this a long, long time, and I've been a vocalist since I was 13 years old. And
yeah,
like, it was a long period of time where screaming was screaming, and really the death metal and black metal world probably were the most extreme versions of of vocals, and then we kind of got this deathcore era. People like even when like Bring Me started, or Suicide Silence, Through the Eyes of the Dead, like All Shall Perish, all of these bands kind of came out, and it was like, holy crap, like that's like pushing the extremes, that's pushing the envelope when it comes to like vocals. And like, but I was always like, well, we're in this metalcore world, so I don't want it to sound contrite. I don't want people to be like, oh, here we go, Dan's trying to show off with his vocals. And like, I've progressed, I'm learning every day. I'm getting better and better at what I do. I'm better now as a vocalist than I ever have been,
Yeah, man.
which is some kind, I don't know, not rare. I think bands do it, but like, I'm always up for learning more vocals. And the great thing is our music has progressed in a more kind of metal way, and a heavier way, that it's almost warranted me changing along with it. So it's kind of like, yeah, it is more brutal in places on this record, but actually this is it doesn't sound like, oh, that's weird. Dan's like overtly progressing. It's all kind of coming together. And yeah, now I have a setup where I record at home, and and I'm pushing myself, and and so I should, there's some great vocalists out there. And for a long period of time, screaming was screaming, right? And it was a good screamer, or an okay screamer, and that was screaming in music. Whereas now, like, you look at the people that are out there, you look at the Courtney LaPlante, you look at the Will Ramos, you look at like Taylor from Left to Suffer, like, these are like, this is a
Insane.
different planet of vocals.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had our era. We've got people like Phil Bozeman, we've got Mitch Lucker prior to him. You've got people like prior to him, Randy Blythe. Like, these are the standout people, but like now it's like everybody seems to be this other planetary vocalist, and I've got to keep up. I've got to work on my craft, and so I should. Like, I can't
Yep.
sit back and be like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Like,
No,
whatever, vocalist,
I get it too, man. Like, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I've found now with, there's heaps of different techniques that I'm learning
Yeah,
now. And
yeah.
it's mind blowing. Like, these kids are coming up discovering ways of contorting the voice, like the tongue, and man, I'm learning all that stuff too. It's nuts. And your videos, I'm loving your vocal videos too. Doing all the
Thank you.
covers and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
it's mad, man. Like, and it helps me. Like, recording, like, live has never been a problem for me. As I said,
hmm,
I've played a lot of shows over the years. I've done a lot of long tours over the years. And professionally toured for, since I was like 17. And so, like, I've done this, and I'm happy with live. I'm like, yeah, cool. I know what I'm doing live. But when it comes to like recording, it always was the bit that I was like, oh, okay, I want
hmm.
to make sure it sounds live. And over the last two albums, like Cannibal and this, like, I've managed to emulate that. Would I change things? Probably not on how the delivery was on Seventh Son, but I would definitely change. I would record on an SM7 again instead of an SM58 with
Oh, okay.
Seventh Son on. And that was more for comfort, that was more for
Yeah.
like, and you can hear it. You can hear how I elongate certain notes or dip certain notes. And that's because I'm on an SM58, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm comfortable. I know this.
Yes.
Like, but now I've got my I'm recording an SM7, which is obviously a far more traditional mic for kind of metal vocals, and
Yeah.
I just am 100 times more confident, and obviously I can hear myself in single takes. So, as everyone knows, shock horror, spoiler alert, a lot of the times it's double tracked, quad tracked, whatever it is. Most of your favorite vocalists on the planet are all have all
Yes.
got lots of tracks behind them, and especially in death metal world where it's various different left and rights and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I really enjoy that I can hear like what my voice sounds just coming out of my mouth, which again, it's just literally that's all I'm doing. I'm putting on a track and single track, let's go. And yeah, that Spirit Box one that I did was really cool because that was my first take. So that was literally, I was like, all right, I'm gonna listen to this song. And I tracked a couple of bits and I was like, okay, cool, I probably can do this song now. I went and listened to the song again, Holy Roller, and then yeah, literally I came back here, put it on first take, and I was like, that's so cool. I was really stoked that I could do that. And it's cool because it gives me confidence in my own art.
Game changer, dude. Is a game changer. And I think I sent you a message, like, because I needed to find a new way of recording, and I remember you did the 58, and I think I sent you a message, and I was like, "How'd you do this, dude? Because it's not the easiest thing." And I spoke to Will as well, like, Dan. Sorry, Dan. it's early morning. I spoke to Dan as well about how he did it, like the vocal chain and stuff, and that really
Yeah.
helped me. You know, it really helped me. So yeah, thank you
Yeah, it's
for your
amazing. It's
advice, dude.
amazing what you can do, man. Like, and it's amazing, some of the biggest artists, people are always, you're always going to try and pick, and I'm guilty of this, right? So I got Logic and I've got
Yeah.
the vocal chains that people use, and I've got the SM7 now. Here it is,
Hey.
right next to me. And but don't be afraid to like experiment with things. Like some of the best artists out there, like have used things like SM58s, which you would
Yeah.
naturally be like, oh, it's not the most expensive microphone, but like it's a solid microphone, and I would argue that for feel, and especially if I'm not one of these elitists that's like you can't, like I don't cup the mic, but like I'm not an elitist in some. If someone feels that that's how it sounds cool and they want to do it, then crack on. Like
Yeah, that's whatever
that's
works, man.
right. It is what it is. Like especially screaming vocals, man. Like it, there is a thousand, as you alluded to before, there's a thousand ways to do the same thing, really. And for a lot of people, they're sat blowing their voice out because they're trying to be someone other vocalists. And it's
Mhm.
like, I've always been quite confident, and that's one thing I took from Melissa Cross, like massively, was like, don't try and be someone else, like try and be you. And yeah, technique is important. Like, so when I watch I'm like Will Ramos, or I'm watching Taylor do his recording from Left to Suffer. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I get what you're doing. And Dave, from the Metal Vocal Institute, like I watch him and his videos, and I'm like, that's really interesting, and how he talks about vocal mechanics. But I've also done that. So for me, I've helped other vocalists, and when they're struggling with things, they're struggling with breath pressure, they're struggling with
Mm.
like fry, and my biggest thing is that I did vocals in a certain way, and I had to be amped up for a long time. I was like, right, I've got to be pumped up, and it was false chord, and I didn't know this at the time, but our first album was straight false chord, and then I went into our first American tour, and I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done because it just blew my voice out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I had to learn really quickly. We were on a 6.5 week tour. It had 3 days off. I was like, right, here we go. Like, I've got to be better. And then when we did Union of Crowns, I like fully went Fri. So it's fully Fri. And ever since that point in 2012, I've kind of rebuilt in almost a blended approach of false and Fri. And so what you're hearing now is the absolute culmination of that. So, even in Black Flame, it's probably slightly less false chord and more Fri. And then with Cannibal, it was proper blended. So like, it was like, oh, here we go. And then with this record, even more so, like you're hearing a proper combination of both of those things together.
Oh, it's epic, dude.
I could talk about
Amazing.
vocals
Oh
forever.
no,
So
no, me too, man. Me too. I'd love to have a proper like deep dive, but you're coming back to Australia, dude.
we are.
So damn keen. It's long overdue, man. Like, when was the last time we saw you? I'm trying to remember because
It was when we toured in 2015, maybe 2014, 2015, probably 2014. I can't remember. But yeah, we did it with the Ghost Inside and Ike of the Prom Queen and Hellions and In Heart's Wake.
that's right.
Um, but obviously monster tour, but we also then did like some headline shows after. So we were out in Oz for like probably 5 weeks. So, which is the longest Australian tour that probably any international band's ever done in Oz. But it was a really good time. Like one thing I would say is like, whilst we haven't been there since, which is a long time, like I'm glad we did that because I could really experience Australia in its entirety rather than just what usual bands do, which is like, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, maybe they get over to Adelaide and Perth. Like, but really that's it. Whereas we did the whole vibe, like we did everywhere, and we did the fucking bush. We were there, um, and then we could, we had a week off in, I think it was Adelaide, and then we did, another week and a half of our own kind of tour, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I stoked that we can get back out there and headline, and hopefully that opens up some more doors for us out there.
Oh, dude, it's gonna be epic. Sorry, my alarm was telling me to wake up. Right when you're
Wake up,
doing it.
right?
I know. Stupid. Anyway, but I can't wait to see you, man. I can't wait to see you again. It's going to be such a good tour. And
Yeah,
man,
it's gonna be
especially
fun.
with this album, man, you're on fire, bro. It's going to
Thank
be
you, buddy.
such
I
a
appreciate
massive
it.
year for you. And wish you and the boys all the best. And we're going to have all the links down here. Seventh Son is out next week on March 31st. And mate, it's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you in Oz.
Yeah, let's go. Have a beer. Beer and Brizzy.
Beers it is.
Thanks, dude.